Now we're on to the practical application section of the respect module. So first question, and just as a reminder, I know I've said this 1 million times, but just in case we forgot or you hopped in the middle of this or something, I'm giving you examples of for myself so that you know kind of what we're asking, but please pause and actually answer these questions for yourself. Hopefully written down in your workbook or on a piece of paper or something, but if nothing else, out loud will suffice. Just take some time to reflect on these questions for you and what makes sense for you. So number one, what are your strengths? I'm very perseverant and determined, and I'm very loving and kind-hearted. And just as I think I said this before already, but just as a reminder, in the back of the participant workbook, there's an example, a whole page that's called Examples of Strengths. So if you struggle to identify your strengths, please see that page to give you some, because I promise you, you have strengths. And if you have a hard time coming up with them, it'll give you some ideas of what may be true for you. Number two, what are some difficult things you have survived or overcome in your life? So for me, I have, like I talked about a little bit in the introduction, I have a laundry list of psychological disorders. Some that I still deal with and some that I have overcome. And I like to joke, slash it's not a joke, but also a little bit of a joke, that I have I've got at least one thing from pretty much every section of the DSM, or have experienced at least one thing at some point in my life from most, maybe not all, but most sections of the DSM. And if for those of you, I think I've explained this before, but just in case, the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's basically the Bible of psychology and psychiatry. And wow, yeah, it's hard. It's been hard. It's been hard to live like that. But it's also been my greatest teacher as well. So I don't think that I would be as good of a psychologist to be able to help people as much as I have been and will be able to do in the future if I didn't have personal experience of what it's like to go through those things. So, but surviving, that's been really hard. Also have survived a lot of chronic pain, and just many physical illnesses, endometriosis and PCOS, and I'm sure lots of people that are listening to this also have those things or know somebody that does, and other autoimmune conditions and things like that. And it's not fun. It's not fun to live in a body with all of that stuff going on. So that's been hard to survive. And then, of course, a variety of traumas and chronic stress. I don't recommend doing this at all, but I went from, like, after high school, I literally went bachelor's, master's, PhD, postdoc, service commitment. Like, there's never been a break. And that was exhausting. Just tons of chronic stress. Still has not fully slowed down, but we're trying. We're trying. And being on the front lines of the mental health war, just being in this field in general, and being in healthcare in general. I know a lot of people that are listening right now are in the mental health field or in healthcare in general. And this is not that it's ever been easy, I'm sure, but this is a really rough time. We're in a war right now. I mean, we're in the world's in many wars, but you know what I mean. We as a society right now, we are in a mental, spiritual, physical war for our health. Because the way our society is set up seems to actively want us to be ill and be in chronic stress and be dysregulated in our bodies. And it's very, very, very hard to deal with that yourself and then to also like lead other people through that. So yeah, being on the front lines of the mental health war has not been pleasant. So there's been a lot that I've survived, and what I want you, and I'm sure that is the case for everybody, right? We all have our own journeys, our own stories, our own traumas, our own stresses. And so I encourage you to pause for, because this is gonna help you with the next several questions. Pause for a second and really think about everything that you've been through. So you can start to give yourself credit for it. Which brings me to the next question. How can you give yourself more credit for your strengths and what you've had to face in your life? So for me, I can remind myself that the struggles that I still face are not from weakness or like not enoughness, because that's what the trauma programming wants to tell me, is that I'm just broken and not enough and blah blah blah, but that is not true. It's actually because of a system and a culture, not just our current one, but things that we've all dealt with over the last several generations that have done its best to, or they've done their best to break me down, to break us all down, right? It's doing its best to kill us and kill our spirit. It's trying really hard. And actually, I'm very strong, and so is everybody else for being able to survive this, and especially for those of us who can survive it and still be connected to love in some way. That it doesn't completely kill our compassion and our love, for ourselves and everybody else. So that is definitely one way I can give myself more credit for my strengths, given the context that I've been in. So please pause and do that for yourself. All right, next one, what are areas for growth? Things I would like to improve on. Definitely need to work on my relationships and my social connection. Just trying to work on healing myself and just overcoming the things that I deal with has made it to where I'm a bit of a hermit and I'm not, and just being autistic makes it really hard to navigate relationships and feeling connected to others. So that's something that I always need to work on. And then also just believing in myself in general. No matter how many things I accomplish or how much I overcome, I still still struggle to believe in myself. So gotta keep working on that. Um, Okay, and the next one, when you examine your full context, your upbringing, societal pressures and influences, physical and cognitive limitations, other forces working against you, etc., how can you give yourself more compassion, understanding, and acceptance for your imperfections and areas for growth? First, what I can do is I can catch my negative self-talk and my shame spirals from the inner critic as soon as I can, as soon as I notice that that's happening, and then start to replace them with the things that we've talked about, right? So when I feel really out of balance and I get into a negative place where I'm just like being self-abusive and shameful, I can then go do some heart-brain coherence. We talked about before in the gratitude module and start to regulate enough to turn on the inner cheerleader and start fighting back against the inner critic and replacing those negative self-talks with empowering self-talks and being positive and understanding what I'm going through in my context and not seeing it as just I am broken or something. I can also remind myself that it is a absolute miracle and a testament to my strength that I'm even still alive at this point, and that just surviving is enough. And I do not need to be perfect. And I can be proud of myself for just still being here, even though I'm not exactly what I want to be or, you know, have the life that I want just yet. And that's okay. All right. And then what are some ways you can be more respectful to your fellow humans? How can you treat them how they want to be treated? I need to do a better job about both setting and maintaining boundaries with people instead of people pleasing. Because when I people please, eventually I start to get really resentful of whoever I'm people pleasing with and will get frustrated easily and very overwhelmed, overstimulated. And then when I feel drained and overstimulated, it's harder for me to communicate in a healthy, mature way. And so I will start communicating poorly with them and becoming more avoidant, which is not very respectful to others. So I know it sounds strange, but sometimes the way to be respectful to others is to maintain boundaries and to stand up for yourself, and not overpromise more than you can give or put yourself in a position where you might, conflict is likely to happen. So, all right. And the next one, what are some ways you can show more respect for other species and the planet? I'm really big on respecting, well, the planet in general, but especially animals. I have an extreme amount, like super extreme amount of empathy for animals. It like hurts probably more so than humans, honestly. And I know that sounds bad. And I have lots of empathy for humans, don't get me wrong. But animals we treat them like garbage, honestly. We treat them horribly, and it breaks my heart. So that's why I'm vegan, and I'm not advocating for other people to be vegan. You do whatever feels right to you. But one thing about that though is there's a lot of negativity in the society about vegans that we're like annoying or think we're better than other people or that we're really preachy about it. And because of that, it like keeps me from advocating for animals when I can and for the planet too. Because I just am always worried about like people thinking I'm annoying and I wouldn't, I'm not trying to not in a way where I would be like preachy or telling other people what to do, but I would like to get more involved with like actual, you know, organizations that promote animal rights and things of that nature. I'm just always concerned about how we'll be viewed or experience more rejection over being vegan because some people are fine with it and some people get annoyed with it. So I need to not worry about people being annoyed and just do what feels correct to me. All right. And then number 8, what are your top 5 values? Do you embody these values in your everyday life? If not, how can you begin to? It was hard to come up with this list because there's a lot of values, but I think my top ones are empathy and kindness. And yes, I do try to embody those every day until I get overwhelmed and overstimulated, and then it's hard. So I try to I try to do stress management and avoid getting overwhelmed so that I can stay connected to my heart and speak and, behave with kindness. I value autonomy and freedom. I do my best to embody those every day. It is quite hard to fully embody that given our context, because I know we technically are supposedly live in the land of the free, but it doesn't always feel that free. You know what I mean? At least to me, hasn't felt that free. So it's hard to fully experience that, but I do with the control that I do have, I do my best to maintain autonomy and freedom. And then also value health and wellness. And I definitely try my best every day to live in a way that promotes health and wellness. Obviously, there's, as we've talked about a million times, lots of things that make that hard, but with the resources and time that I have, I do my best. And then I also value service to others. I definitely embody that one. Maybe a little too much. Maybe sometimes I need to fill my own cup up first. I struggle with that, but in general, I am very oriented towards serving others. And then last but not least, I value perseverance. And if I didn't, I wouldn't still be here because it's been hard to persevere. But and that's why I'm happy that there's a whole module in Walking in Balance over perseverance, because we really have to have that quality and practice that in order to survive Earth, especially for those of us who have chronic health conditions and things of that nature. So, oh, went forward too fast. Okay, and then last part, we want to spend time around respectful people. It's hard to stay positive and respectful to yourself and others when you are constantly subjected to negativity and disrespect. What we consume influences our thoughts. So if we are hearing negativity and disrespect on a regular basis, we will likely find ourselves having that attitude as well. And with that, I just also want to add that we are currently as we all know, in a really hard, critical period of history where we are, there seems to be forces that are trying to separate us, right? They want us to be divided. What's that phrase, right? Divide and conquer. The best way to keep a group of people under control is to make them have a common enemy, right? To group people into groups and make them fight against each other, and instead of like really seeing what's going on. And that's happening very much in our society right now. We are constantly being pushed to identify with certain groups and to hate other groups because of that. And that's been really damaging. So just be very careful what you're consuming online, through social media, through the news. Be very discerning about that. Just ask yourself, like, if I were to take in this belief that this thing is trying to get me to believe, would it lead me to loving others more and being respectful to others more? Or is it leading me to hatred and misunderstanding and having a calloused heart towards other people, other groups of people or animals or the planet or whatever, right? So just be very careful with all of that, because we're being attacked right now in many ways. And one big way is that we're being attacked is to divide us into groups when really we are all earthlings, and that's what we need to focus on. We are all part of this planet, regardless of what groups we identify with or where we come from or even what species we are. We all are on this planet and we all should be working together. And right now we're being heavily pushed to not work together. So I hope that we can overcome that. And that starts with making sure that we are being careful what kind of content we're taking in and who we're allowing ourselves to be influenced by. So, okay, I'll get off my soapbox about that. Don't forget that there's a note section at the end of this one as well to add any notes, any other thoughts that you might have. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next section.